Hello, everybody, and welcome to Bright Founders Talk at Temi. Temi is an international software development company that designs, builds, and delivers software for sustainable businesses and promising startups. Welcome to our podcast, where we bring you the most inspiring stories of entrepreneurs and experts in the software development industry. And each week, we interview successful leaders who share their unique journeys and valuable insights. I'm your host, Barry. And today we're lucky enough to have a remarkable guest joining us. That's Mark Kragh, who is CTO and co-founder of Off-Grid Europe and Off-Grid Africa. Hello, Mark. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me.
And how are you doing today?
It's another busy day. We're coming back from a holiday. We have twice a year, and we're kind of fully recharged to get back to work now. But everybody is kind of jumping on us and wanting to have the answers for a lot of different questions. So far, so good.
Perfect. And I'm sure being busy is like a normal day for you, isn't it? I don't suppose you get many non-busy days.
Well, if you're a founder like my wife and I are, you're fully committed. So it means that you're checking your messages and everything basically from the moment you wake up until you fall asleep. It's pretty much the last thing I do. Maybe I then put on a podcast or something non-business wise to just take my brain out of it for those hours that I sleep. And that goes like that pretty much also through the weekend, which I'm very happy about, by the way, and so is my wife mostly.
It's a mixed blessing, isn't it, sometimes? It's nice to be busy, but sometimes it is nice to have a little bit of that downtime. Do you find it hard to balance like your work-life relationships? Is it quite easy for you to segregate that time?
Well, I mean, I don't consider it a problem, right? So, it's not to me like a question of like, what am I going to do with my work life or my private life? I just take it as it's coming. And if I have time, then I can do more with my private life. And if I have work priorities, I focus on those. So I don't consider it really an issue, It's not something that bothers me as such.
Okay, so since we're talking about work, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself and the companies that you work at?
Yeah, so my name is Mark. I'm Danish. I moved away when I was about 20 years old from Denmark. Had this idea that I wanted to set up a company to do something cool and worked for quite a while in business until we set up our own company, my wife and I. And I met my wife at EasyJet, where we worked together in the customer service department, actually. And we work in this big international call center. I think there was 120, 150 agents there, and they were all from different nationalities. It was really cool. We had all these parties in the weekend, and yeah, it's really nice work culture. And I guess since working there, I always thought it'd be nice to try and recreate that kind of environment. So having an idea to recreate that kind of environment, knowing that I wanted to do something with business, I guess somehow this business came about as it wasn't necessarily the target to have this type of business if you'd asked me 20 years ago. But I knew that I wanted to have a business that was able to grow and scale quite nicely. And it's like a concept. It's like a concept. It's like, you know what you want to do. I want to have a company with employees that has high turnover, high scalability, but I'm not quite sure exactly how. And then you find your way into that role, I suppose. If that makes sense.
It does, yeah, it does. It does. So was it meeting your wife that kind of precipitated this whole company? Or was it something that was in like a seed in your mind before then?
This was always a seed in my mind since as long as I remember. So other people will say, oh, you know what? When I was a kid, I look at the stars and I saw the star shoot and I thought, I want to be an astronomer. I always wanted to have a business and run a business. Another thing I knew since I was small was that I knew that we were destroying the planet. That was abundantly clear. I had this big encyclopedia, or like you have a main encyclopedia and then you got editions with different categories. And being quite a nerd, I would be in the library a lot and I'd be reading this encyclopedia, and that's what I did when I was a child. And even back then, and I'm 44 now, even back then, global warming and climate change and the impact humans have on the earth and all that, it was already well documented. So I kind of knew that something had to happen in that direction, I'm certainly not going to go in and become a weapons manufacturer,
Be a bit of a leap from environmentalist to weapons manufacturer, wouldn't it? So obviously
I
ethics
guess.
plays a strong point in your company. Is that something that's kind of a natural fit for you? Would you be interested in developing other companies which may be not related to the environment?
No, I don't think so. I think it's important that we are all working on something which is trying to improve like society and the world, energy access. I mean, there has to be some kind of positive influence, but in my case, I find energy is the way to go. That's what I'm interested in. I've been interested in all the areas of energy really for most of my life, right? So, energy has got construction, infrastructure, it's got chemistry, physics, material science, management. So you encompass a lot of different things that I'm interested in. So for me, energy is really cool.
So instead of talking about the company, can you just share a little bit about your journey? You touched on it briefly. And also, can you just elucidate of how the company came into existence?
God, I mean, like a company, it doesn't just come into existence, right? It's not like it just appears to 100 employees in two different countries. It was a massive struggle. It was like you change your business model over and over again. So since we started in 2010, first the idea was to make presentations to try and help companies become more environmentally aware. Then we got into solar cells completely by chance. Had this friend Alan, he was in Senegal, and he calls me up and he's like, "Hey Mark, can we do something about this energy problems?" I said, no. Solar power is way too expensive, But I couldn't leave it alone, so I thought I'm just gonna keep on looking into this, and I realized you can have solar cells. You could build your own solar cell. We take some solar cells and sort of like you solder them together, put them all in a series, and then you make together some glasses, some real DIY stuff. And that was in 2010. So anyway, I thought, okay, where am I going to get some solar cells? So I found these solar cells that were not really much available, little bit on eBay. Then I called around to different manufacturers, and I called Sharp Manufacturing, which was back then the biggest solar panel manufacturer in the world. It's actually in Wales, in England, in Wrexham. And I called them up and said, "Hi, I have this idea. Can you help me? I want to get some scrap solar cells." And they said, yeah, we want to help you with something like that. And so I drove up there in my best shitty suit, which I don't think I have a much better suit today, actually, but it's not really a priority. But I went up there. They gave me 4 kilos of solar cells for free. Went back home, called Alan and said, "Hey, Alan, I've got these solar cells. I can come to Senegal and install this for you." He said, "Oh, Mark, I'm coming home now. My wife is pregnant. We're going to have a child. I'm going to come back to England. And we're going to have this child here." So I'm like, "Oh, okay." Put the solar cells on a shelf, these 4 kilos, and thought, I don't know what I'm doing with this. My wife, she goes on eBay, finds solar cells that are similar, and she puts them on eBay, and she sells them. I mean, we really had no money back then. I was trying to set up the business. I was working as a handyman while I was doing this, and she was working in an advertisement agency. Then, the day of the listing came, do you remember how they used to sell stuff on eBay?
I'm old enough to remember that, yeah.
And you would have the bids come in, right, and they tick up, and it was super exciting, right, and ended up 120 pounds for 1 kilo. It's like, shit, this is amazing. We have 120 pounds now. We had another 3 kilos. So we sold the other 3 kilos, right, and we had 480 pounds. So I call up Sharp and goes, "Hey, Sharp, I want to buy some more." And they said, "Well, this was for charitable purposes. There's a minimum order quantity." Okay, what's that? It was like 1 ton. What does that cost? 40,000 pounds. Okay, well, I can call up my mother, get another 500 pounds or something like that, and I had 1,000 pounds. Call them up again, said, like, "I have 1,000 pounds. Can you sell me something?" And that's what they did. And so we sold that, and then we had, shall we just say, I mean, it really was like, then we had 2,000 pounds worth, and we had 4,000 pounds, 8,000 pounds worth, until we had maybe 100,000 pounds worth of solar cells. And we were selling on eBay, and then eBay kept on increasing the fees. They went from 3% to 10% fees. It was awful. And they changed all the regulations for sellers, and eventually they kind of destroyed the business model. They made it with DHL and UPS, so goods can get imported from China, directly and basically outbid the entire European market, which I'm sure that there are tens of thousands even of resellers in Europe. They were destroyed by eBay's policy, Amazon, and all this kind of stuff. Became like a centralized thing. Not wanting to have our business destroyed, we try to diversify the portfolio. So we try to do other products like inverters, solar panels, batteries, and just get into this. And then we moved to Germany. We got rid of the solar panels completely. We also got rid of the web shops, because web shops are just, honestly, you're a bit like you're very bound in that situation. Like your search engine algorithm from Google can change, and from one moment your listings are on the top, the next moment they're not. So we try to get in more to B2B business, or even government to business. And then we had some ideas to try and expand the product portfolio. So we started thinking, we can make container systems. So that's what we did. And then we landed one deal and another deal and a third deal. And, before we know it, we have like what we call nationwide building projects. But it doesn't just happen within, it's not, there's no magic bullet. Like you have to just be able to just take a huge amount of shit and just never give up. Basically, that's if that's a long answer to your question there.
Because you think when entrepreneurs start these companies, it's just plain sailing all the way. You don't realize like how many entrepreneurs have to go through a total rigmarole before they get to somewhere where they actually start to feel very comfortable with their direction in the company, etc.
Yes, it's terrible.
You mentioned some of the contacts that you had there. Like, how important is networking and contacts for entrepreneurs, especially at the beginning?
On one hand, it's really important to create in really good networks. Surprisingly enough, I think, in our field anyway, some of the most important contacts were actually the companies that were selling us the products that we want to sell on. So that's quite a competitive market space to get the good price. It requires a lot of, working with clients, because if you come in as a company and you say, what's your turnover? Oh, my turnover is 100,000 euros. Okay, well, we don't sell like bulk to people less than 5 million. So how do you get in there? It's very, very hard. At this point in time now, we can choose to some degree where we are buying from, and now we have the size, but that was really, really difficult. The other thing, of course, is the customers have to take you serious. A lot of preparation. Every single meeting goes into it. So the preparation comes first with the goods, right? If you can't prepare the goods in the right price category, well, you can rely on your charm, but that will only get you so far, I think, in a competitive marketplace.
Well, it got you to where you are now, so that must have been quite successful, right?
At this point in time, you see your network keeps on growing, right? And you don't want to piss off too much of your network. I would say, though, if some parts of your network are negative, or you're not in, I wouldn't say not serving your interest, but not serving a good interest, like as in, the right people to work with, then you try and keep a network which is true to your values, and keep expanding on this, and stay true to your values and to your network. Then it will hopefully come, right? But not without massive difficulties and sleepless nights and more sleepless nights. And it really is like, people ask me quite often, how do you become successful? What was the key? I say it's very simple. You just don't give up. Whatever happens, don't give up. That's when from what I've seen over the years, is the people that didn't make it as a business or a musician or the job or whatever, it's because they gave up. It's as simple as that. When you give up, then obviously it's the end. It stops right there.
You accept defeat at that point, don't you?
You accept defeat. It's not to say that you shouldn't give up sometimes. You have to learn when is the right time. But if the overall concept of what you're trying to achieve, right, to run a business, you can't give that up. But if you have subsections of that, maybe that business model is not working, this product was not the correct one, or whatever it is, you should be clear, axe that thing, take what you learned, move on. But the overall target should not be thrown away. I mean, unless you're like thinking, oh, well, that's not for me. I want to go back and I want to do something different. So,
There's always an exception to every rule, right?
of course, yeah, exactly.
Okay, so we've talked quite a bit about your past. So let's concentrate a little bit about what's happened currently. So, in terms of tech trends, like what kind of trends are currently catching your attention within the industry, and what are the driving factors behind their significance?
So, of course, everybody's talking about artificial intelligence. I mean, I hate to be sounding like it's probably just like a bloody record because everybody talks about it now. But of course, it's artificial intelligence. How are we going to go about this with our programming teams and so on? The idea is not to scale up our programming teams too much. I believe that probably we're going to be able to ask the computers to write us all the software in a few years from now. So that's a big thing. I see a future where probably entire engineering offices will be completely redundant because let's say you're a wealthy Saudi Arabian entrepreneur and you want to build 1,000 meter shaped tall building shaped like a donut with a hole around the middle for whatever reason you want to do. You could probably sit down with your computer in a few years from now and literally just tell it that's what you want to do. And it will come up with all the plans and schedules, maybe, I don't know, 2 years, 5 years, whatever. But at some point, that's what it will be able to do. And, if you take that concept across to pretty much everything, doctors, engineering, design work, anything that's skilled, professional, it's going to be tough. So you have to, or I think that you have to align yourself for this. The rest of the industry right now for solar, I mean, there are incremental increases right now. Prices get decreased. Batteries get more efficient. New battery types come out, sodium and whatever, that sort of thing. I don't see any major game changes hitting the market tomorrow. Even if they were, scale manufacturing takes time to build up. So, I mean, AI is definitely a thing to look out. Well, I think that we are personally, as a company, very well positioned because we're not very big. So that means that we can take the benefit of the AI over the next few years. Whereas if you have a really large infrastructure, then maybe you really have to downscale, and then AI can probably present a really big issue. I think.
Yeah, I think you're not alone in that. And as you mentioned, it is kind of hard. Like the speed at which AI is developing is just incredible. I mean, in the public sector, you can see what's happening now, and it's remarkable. But behind the scenes, there are already things going on that probably will surprise us in like 5 years' time. You're quite prepared for what's coming up ahead because of the size of your company, so that makes you very agile and nimble. Are there any concerns that you have about AI that might impact the server market?
The server market, or do you mean as in the server market as the hardware market for?
Correct, yeah.
I think right now it seems to me like, okay, so on one hand, there are going to be significantly more AIs out there. So I used to think that AIs would be like maybe one AI would take over the world, like a Terminator style singularity. But probably what's going to happen right now is there'll be hundreds or even thousands or millions of AIs out there, and they will be functioning like humans. And maybe it's not so dramatic because they keep each other in balance. I mean, how that would affect the server market, I think, on one hand, I think that the amount of processing power required in order to drive an AI unit is going to continue to fall, like with Moore's law, that sort of thing. They'll figure out better ways to do it because right now it's very energy inefficient. It's probably both a hardware and a software problem. So let's say that you didn't put more AIs into the world, then probably you would need a fraction of the computers in the future, or even less than that. But at the same time, there will be more AIs. So I don't know. They probably would be consuming a significant amount of power. They probably will be. It's funny, right? That because AIs are consuming all this power, right? And a biological brain can do an enormous amount of parallel processing. And so we're far ahead of them there, right? But we just can't. For now, but I mean, that vast quantity of knowledge, that's where the failure will be. Oh God, us as humans in the future. I mean, we're just going to be like, pets on the planet Earth. just
Something
keeping
to look
us.
forward to, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, maybe not, but probably the vast majority of people would be happy with a scenario where they can. But there's the inequality. Poor people, like extremely poor people, how will it
I'm,
benefit them?
yeah, I'm not
I
sure how
don't.
that's going to change for the better necessarily. If less people are working when AI starts to do more jobs.
It
Is
takes
that,
jobs away, exactly. And then probably to begin with, you're going to have a race to the bottom in terms of labor costs, right? The computers and robots make it cheaper. I hope
so,
that it will be good.
so since we're talking about the future now anyway, like, could you just outline your primary focal points and ongoing projects or endeavors?
So the idea right now is to continue to scale the company fast. Our target is 1 billion turnover by 2030. We're in the energy sector, so this shouldn't really be too much of a problem. We want to open up new offices. We're opening up a few more, hopefully this year, in Africa. And the idea is to continue to open those offices. So we have built a scalable ERP system. It's still underway, but it's now functioning in terms of project management, finance, recruitment, fleet management, and all that sort of stuff. And the idea is to open up more offices. And when you open up those offices, you already have like the software stack set up, and then you sort of add management to it. And the idea will be to continue down this direction. I will probably open up a nuclear division, I think, within the next 5 to 10 years, if I'm able to continue to have growth and capital available for R&D, because I want to have a technological advance in that for either small nuclear reactors or, a fusion, if they can figure out how to start whacking these atoms together in a sensible way, so actually start making a meaningful energy production. That would be sort of like long, medium, so short, medium, long term goals that we have. Open up more offices and have control over the entire process from project engineering. You get a project to manufacturing of engineering, assembly, logistics, installation, and service afterwards. Because that means that we're going to be able to, it's going to be hard for other companies to compete with us on price and service. And yeah, that's our target, effectively.
It's very interesting you mentioned the nuclear market because what happens in terms of like fusion and fission, that could really revolutionize the energy sector. Is that kind of why? Are you preparing for an eventual like revelation, or is that something that you think we might be still far off from yet?
Well, nuclear power has been something I've been super interested in since I was a kid. I mean, when I was 13 years old, I literally gave like a lecture in my class. It was meant to just be 30 minutes, and I talked for 1.5 hours about atomic bombs and reactors and all that sort of stuff. So, I mean, I'm not a nuclear physicist, but I've been keeping an eye on this for a while, and I think that there are a lot of things. So previously, you had this nuclear reactor would be like a pressure boiling water reactor, right? We basically, I don't remember who said it. Maybe it was even Einstein, or maybe just somebody quoted and said it was him. But it said like nuclear reactor is a hell of a way to boil water, because you just got these rods, and then you got the moderators. And then you're just heating up water until 300 degrees, right? And you're just running it through a turbine, cooling down the water and repeating that process. So everything about that is kind of crazy, You've got 1,000 tons worth of material that is like, if it all melts, it'll just keep on being radioactive for like ever, or at least as long as it's relevant for us. That's the current situation. But there's some really cool reactor technologies out there, like molten salt reactors or the lead type. Again, where you have like a liquid. You have the what's it called? The fissile material inside a liquid, and that liquid goes through the moderator, and that then causes the reaction to happen. And again, you can boil some water, but the difference being with these reactors that you can have a scenario where the nuclear reactor, if it was to go critical, it would sort of melt or into a different stage that would then become inert, and then the reactor would be safe to handle. And those reactors can be made much smaller. So maybe you can have distributed nuclear reactors around the whole world. And Russia and China are actually working on this, and I think China especially working on this very fast because they just have less red tape. I think the European and American, they're really shooting themselves in the foot here, you know, because the whole lobbying industry for the nuclear sector is prohibitive towards, interesting technology. But having said that, they're releasing the red tape now. And so, in answer to your question, I anticipate that this is going to become real in the next 5 to 10 years. Either China are going to make this happen, and they will, or the European Union will finally, or and America will decide to let this marketplace become a little bit more liberal. Now, everybody can say this is a terrible thing and you don't want to have all this radioactive waste everywhere, and it's completely true. It's terrible in that regard. But coal is also pretty bad. And I mean, the old style reactors, they only burn maybe 0.5% or 1% of the fissile material. And the modern reactors can burn pretty much all of it. So that means you can even reprocess old fuel, So you just get rid of it. So I want to think about this for the future, right? Because our company is going to be creating an energy landscape, an energy marketplace that already exists, but we want to be part of it. And we'll be powering villages, cities, towns. And if solar does not become the only thing in Africa, the wind doesn't blow that much really in Africa as such, or not the areas that we work in. Maybe a nuclear reactor is one of the things that you want to put. I mean, okay, I don't know how you deal with security issues and all that kind of stuff. That's a whole different topic, right? But in theory, we do have this carbon challenge. The carbon reduction is not going down right now. It's going up. We have to do something, right?
Really interesting. Thank you much for sharing that. Kind of a bit of a segue from the original conversation, but it's really interesting and it's nice to hear your thoughts about that. And who knows, in 5 or 10 years, maybe you will be one of the major leaders in that particular field. You never know what happens. Mark, unfortunately, we're running out of time. And as much as I could talk to you all day, we have to draw it to an end.
Okay.
I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. It's an absolute pleasure talking with you.
No, that's really nice talking with you too. And I hope that the weather gets better soon where you are, so you won't be stuck in the fog all day long.
I think I'm resigned to the fact that summer's not here this year. But thank you very much for your good wishes anyway.
No
That
worries.
was Mark Kragh, CTO and co-founder of Off Grid Europe and Off Grid Africa.